Good morning, boys and girls. Let's talk a little bit about the plagiarism stuff and citation stuff that we did in the forums last week. I know you're all dying to see my ugly mug. You haven't seen it in a while, so here it is. Um, First off, in terms of citation, it's going to become important on the last project that you're doing. Uh, Getting it right. Yeah, you got to do it. Yeah, you got to get it right. Yeah, you got to keep track of your sources. Yeah, you got to give credit to the sources that you're using, and all that stuff is true. But the way I learned to make it make sense for me was I think about research as like a journey out into the unknown. You're going to learn something about your topic, but as a scholar, it's not enough to just learn and process information. The scholar has an obligation, absolute obligation to the community to come back and share that knowledge in the hopes that the human enterprise will be pushed forward a notch or two from that person's work. So just because you're writing a research argument for introductory composition class at a community college doesn't mean that you're not contributing. You are contributing to that conversation. And so the really important reason for doing all this citation and being careful about plagiarism is we need to keep track of our journeys, so when we come back and contribute to the community, we know where we've been and the community knows where we've been, and so someone else can pick up where we left off and push the knowledge further and expand the human race a little further. So we leave marks of our journey so that other people can come along and follow us. It's not just about you have to do it or else I'm going to catch you and make a red mark on your paper. That's frankly, in college, that's an infantile way to think about it. Excuse my language, but that's not the way to think about it. The way to think about it is you're part of a scholarly community. You take from that community. We give back to that community. We share with that community, and maybe that community might push the human race forward a little bit. It sure as heck is true that the politicians aren't doing it right now, and it may come down to the academic community saving our culture. It has happened in the past. In the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, when things were really, really bad in Europe, what brought European civilization through and saved the artifacts of European civilization were the universities and the scholarly communities who preserved and expanded on that knowledge. I'm not going to extend that analogy for you, but it's beginning to look like that. So take your obligations and your responsibilities seriously, because that's where the joy lies. Anyway, enough preaching. I threw you a couple of curves last week, and I really appreciated all your good faith conversations last week. But let me talk a little bit about this whole process of citation. Again, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you that I don't expect you to memorize this stuff. I don't know most of it myself. I don't need to know it. It's in the book. It's in the handbook. So what I have to have is I don't have to have that information in my head. I have to have the discipline to find the model and the discipline to follow the model exactly. That's all there is to it. I don't expect anybody to know this stuff. I expect you and me to know where the information is and have the courage to go and find it and then use it correctly. That's all I'm asking for. So if anybody's saying you have to memorize this stuff, well, okay, they're saying that, but I don't, that's not the way I think about it. So what you learned is, from the conversations in the forum last week, and they were designed to teach this lesson, is that it's pretty instinctual and pretty intuitive to know when you need to cite something. I think Mike mentioned that it's in one of his forum posts. It becomes common sense after a little while. I'd even add to that and say most of it starts out to be common sense. So you know when to cite. The problem is not knowing when to cite, if you're being honest. The problem is knowing how to cite. So when you know you need to cite, the trick is to know what you're looking at, what kind of a source you're looking at, and then go and find the model of the correct citation and then use it. It's that simple. And Mike is absolutely right. It does become common sense after a while. So I gave you the two things that typically people make a lot of mistakes on and misjudgments because you don't necessarily know how to do it. Let's look at the Mona Lisa thing first. Obviously, if you have a book in your hand and you see a reproduction of that painting in the book, and you use that, yeah, you've got to cite the book. If you use a professional photograph of the painting, you need to cite the photographer. Neither of those was the case, and of course, that would be common sense to you. In this case, in the case of my little snapshot that I took of the painting in the Louvre, that brings up for our discussion the citation and acknowledgement, which are not the same thing. To cite is to do it all correctly with the parenthetical expressions and the works cited page and all that. To acknowledge your source is a much more informal thing. So the way to handle that particular thing where I own the photograph, I'd put the photograph in my essay, and then I put a parenthetical line under it. Someone did suggest this, I've forgotten who, put a parenthetical line underneath the photo in the body of my essay saying, Stephen Acree took this photograph of this painting of the Mona Lisa, or La Gioconda, it's not really the Mona Lisa, on this date, and put that in parentheses near the thing in your essay. Then I would probably go ahead and cite the actual painting, even though I'm not using the painting, and I don't think you'd have to do that. But it would be common sense to me that in my works cited page at the end, I would cite the painting, since it is referred to, well, not the painting, but my photograph of the painting is referred to somehow in the essay. I don't think you'd have to do that, but it makes sense. So you'd cite it, you'd go and look up in your handbook how to cite a painting, and it's fairly simple. It's just the artist's name, the name of the painting, and the date it was painted, I believe, is all that you need. Again, I don't think you'd have to do that, and most of you got, your judgment was good on that I could use it. I could use my photograph in my essay by just simply saying, informally, I took this photograph at the Louvre in Paris, whenever the date was. And then, like I said, it would make common sense to go ahead and cover yourself and cite the painting in your works cited page. The other, somewhat more complicated one was the question about did I plagiarize when I sent you those links out to the plagiarism quizzes. No, I did not in the way I used them. However, and I think one or two of you, maybe Tristan and somebody else, I forgot who, said the key word of the question was, if I used this in an essay, would that be plagiarism? So if I went to one of those websites and I took some words or some images or something else off of one of those websites and used it in my essay without acknowledging the source, it would absolutely be plagiarism. That's, again, common sense. But, and here's the point of this lesson, just sticking the link in there, the URL in there, is not correct MLA citation, or APA either, for that matter. So if I were going to use a thing from a line, a sentence, or some statistics or something from one of those websites in my essay, as data in my essay, I would go to the website, I would collect the author of the website, the owner of the website, which is often a school or a university or something like that. I'd collect the date of creation of the website, and the date that I accessed it. And then I would enter that, and then the URL. And I would enter all of that information in a correct works cited entry at the end of my paper. Probably the creator of the website, if you could find it, would be the first thing in that entry, or the owner, excuse me, the owner, if you can't find the creator, would be the first entry. And then that's what you would cite. So if, say I had made a website, and you were using something from my website, then you would cite me in your works cited page and in your in-text citation. You'd cite me as the author of the website in both cases. You'd have my name in parentheses in the body of your paper, and that would match my name as the first thing on the line for the entry for that website. Just sticking in the URL when you use something, when you use a source, an electronic source like that, you can't just stick in the URL. You have to cite the site correctly, and again, that's in your handbook how to do that. And the URL, the web address, is part of your works cited entry at the end in your paper, but just putting the URL in parentheses in the body of your paper is not correct citation. You have to cite the owner or the creator of the website. So in the way I used it, to just give you those links to work with, that was not plagiarism. If I had used it in an essay without citing the author of the website, that would be plagiarism, or at the very least it would be incorrect citation to just put the URL in there. Both of those, again, are a matter of judgment, and if you know that you need to cite something, then what you don't know is often how to cite it, so you go to your handbook and you figure out how to cite it. It's not so much a matter of when to cite as it is how to cite. And again, the whole reason for getting all that stuff correct is so people can come along behind you and follow your journey. They don't have to start over again. They can pick up where you left off, and maybe we might kick the human race ahead a notch or two in the next 1,000 years or so. So that was the point of it. Most of you, participated beautifully in both of those forums, and I hope the lesson got across. I may send you a little written example of what I'm talking about in case what I've said on this video doesn't make sense. The other thing was Mike asked about what I call the 5-person rule. What I was referring to in the connection with deciding whether something is common knowledge or not. In the Purdue OWL website, which is one of the best around, they suggest that it's common knowledge if you can find the data unsourced and uncited in 5 other places where other writers have judged it to be common knowledge and it didn't need citation. If you can find 5 places where it is not cited in other works, then you can deem that it's common knowledge. That seems really complicated to me. And so I made up the 5-person rule, which is if you want to find out if something is common knowledge, ask 5 people. And if all 5 people know it, then you can say it's common knowledge. And you probably don't need to cite it. An example would be something like, riding a bicycle without a helmet is a major cause of head injuries in crashes. Well, that's common knowledge. Everybody knows that, so that's common knowledge. On the other hand, if I'm going to make up a statistic now, but let's say, and you could ask 5 people about the wearing the helmet thing, and they'd say, yeah, we know that, then it's common knowledge. You wouldn't have to cite it. Let me make up a statistic here. Let's say, 100,000 head injuries per year are caused by people riding bicycles without helmets. That's got some statistics and some data in it. Chances are 5 people won't know that. So you ask the same 5 people, do you know how many accidents are caused each year by that, and they're probably going to say no, so that is not common knowledge. You would have to cite that. And that's the difference. And to me, asking 5 people is a heck of a lot easier than looking for 5 sources where it's undocumented. The other side of that coin in the games that people play with each other is, if you don't know whether something is common knowledge, then cite it. Go to find yourself a source that mentions it. Let's say I just absolutely know that 100,000 head injuries are caused per year. By the way, just made that statistic up. But let's say I absolutely know that. Fact, I know it to be a fact. I don't know how I know it, don't remember where I read it, but I know it's a fact. But I know it's not common knowledge, and I need to go and cite it. So what do? I Google how many accidents are caused, how many brain injuries are caused by not wearing helmets. I find something that cites that statistic, and I cite it. That's not difficult. Or I go to the library and I pull down a book on bicycle safety, and I flip to the index at the end, and I look at the entry for brain injuries, and I go to that page and I see, okay, there's my statistic right there. I just find the source. It's not hard. You don't want to not use information that you know is true, but if it isn't common knowledge, then you have to find a source that supports your assertion, and that is really, really, really easy to do. And sometimes people forget to do that. They say, well, it's not common knowledge, even though I know it's true. It's not common knowledge, and I can't, and so therefore I can't use it. Well, yeah, you can use it. Just go find a source. If you know it, it's written down somewhere. So find where it's written down, and with the search engines and Google and all of that kind of stuff, it's real easy to do that. Okay, so Luis mentioned something, and I've never heard of it, but he said he'd like to see a graphic that shows when and how to cite stuff. Let me see. I don't know. I'm looking to see if I have my MLA handbook handy. I don't see it anywhere, but the MLA handbook is a book about this size, 500 or so pages. It's a big book, and I don't know how you'd make a graphic that covers everything that's possibly in there. But it would be a nice idea to make such a thing. Maybe, Luis, you can think about how to do that and maybe sell it and make some money. You could make a flow chart, I think, that might be really useful. I don't think that would be too hard to make a flow chart. There probably is one somewhere to make a flow chart of common sources. I mean, there's only a dozen really common sources that anybody has to know about, except for super advanced scholars. So that'd be a cool idea. I might poke around and see if I can find something along those lines. Anyway, this week we're just working on one thing. You need to find that topic and find your position on your topic and decide that it's arguable. Because everything depends upon that. If your thesis statement is not arguable, then this assignment will defeat you, and it's a big assignment. It's worth 200 points. But this week, all we're going to do is just find your topic and your stance, your position on the topic, and we'll be working in the forums this week. So that's about it, I think. I hope that kind of makes sense to you, and I'll send you out a couple of written examples that you can look at if you don't understand my mumbling on the video here. I'll send you some stuff. Okay? Bye.